Awesome. Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout. Today we have a special guest, Brandon White. He runs Success Secrets as well as multiple other things as we were talking about before we started recording. But as usual, I'm going to let Brandon introduce himself, tell us a little bit about who he is, what he does, and a little bit about his background.
Well, thanks a lot for having me on, Chris. I think this is a really important topic for all people, in my case, entrepreneurs. I've been an entrepreneur. I actually had to do the math before we got on here. I'm not that old, but I started in my early 20s, as I joked to you before. If you don't count the lemonade stand and the 5 other business ideas my brother and I had when we were kids. But I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years, and I have worked in corporate America. I worked at 2 venture firms. I started my career building the largest social networking site for sport fishermen on the internet in 1996. So I have been on the internet since actually I was in college, and really before that in high school on my Commodore, what was it? Commodore 64. I had a Commodore VIC 20 before that, but and dialing in. And then in college, we had Apple computers. And then when I went back for my master's degree, I was doing a master's degree in psychology. And it was actually when I founded my company, and I was going to publish a fishing magazine. I didn't have enough money to do that. So I figured out that there would be no reason why we couldn't put a magazine and a store on the internet. And that's what I did. And it turned into a crazy adventure. Chris, I had no idea how to build a real business. I had an undergraduate in psychology and a minor in sociology. I was getting a master's in psychology. My parents are entrepreneurs, but this is not one of those things that was necessarily what I was going to do. So we got a book, we wrote a business plan, and, a crazy story was I had read in the front of, you might remember this, in the front of Time magazine, they used to have a new and noteworthy section where it would talk about cool people doing cool things. And I used to read every day in the library. And one day there was an article about these 2 guys named Jerry Yang and David Philo. And they were starting a phone book on the internet, and it was called Yahoo. And I had been using it, and it said that they had raised $1.7 million from Sequoia Capital, which is arguably the best venture firm. Some may argue there's top 3, but Sequoia over the course of decades has returned incredible amounts of money and founded incredible companies as investors. And I said, I'm on the internet. I had recruited a kid from the computing lab, got a job on a spinach farm to pay him because I didn't have enough money myself. And I actually went and got a book, wrote a business plan, and sent my business plan to Sequoia Capital, which is not recommended if you're listening out there. That is not how you get an investor. However, I didn't know what I was doing, so I just really winged it. And one day I had seen an article in the alumni magazine of my college where my undergraduate and my first master's, depending on how you decide, I did at the same college, Washington College. And there was an article in the alumni magazine about a guy who said that he was going to become an investor. So I sent him a note. I said, here's what we were doing. He was a senior when I was a freshman. So we knew each other. It's a very small college. And one day he wrote back, we had talked over several weeks. He said, hey, I met someone today at lunch, and I think you want to meet him. And I said, hey man, whatever you think, give him the information. About 2 hours later, I get an email that says, hey, I am Tom. I was a general partner at Sequoia Capital. I've retired. I'd like to come see you tomorrow. And you can imagine a guy sitting in his spare bedroom in a small town. My wife and I lived in a 1,400 square foot house for, I think, 2 decades. But I was like, hey, yeah, man, love to see you. Here's my address. Show up the next morning. And he showed up, and he walked in, and he looked around, and you got to imagine, like, this is a 1,400 square foot house. If I'm probably including the attic. And my wife, this isn't a sob story, Chris. Like, my wife and I were extremely happy and always have been, mainly because I think we figured out that happiness is wanting what you have. And once you do that, everything else seems to be upside. But he said, well, where's your office? And I said, well, come on up. And went up these wood steps that are creaking, walked in, and he looked around and he said, is this it? I said, hey, look, man, if you came here for something else, I am really sorry that you made the drive. I said, because this is it. I said, my partner has a spare bedroom. And he looked me in the eye and said, calm down, Brennan. This is how we found Cisco. He said, you look bigger. And I was like, well, I got the phone system and all this stuff. And we were doing okay. So we did make this a little bit shorter, but I think it's a good story that I think is inspirational for anybody listening, that it can happen to you. Is we did the business plan on a placemat. That's some music from something.
Perfect timing too.
Yeah, right. I didn't even plan that. I don't even know how that happened. We did the business plan on a placemat at lunch. Literally, he put it in his pocket, and I remember it very explicitly because he turned the placemat over and he uses. We've been friends ever since.
Yeah.
He used those pens that have a really thin point, but the ink bleeds into the paper.
Yep. I know the ones. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And on the menu, on the table mat or placemat, that runs and it creates points. And I just remember that. So I said, hey man, do you want to go fishing? He's like, yeah, let's go fishing. So we went fishing. I hooked up the boat. We went fishing on the way home. He looks at me and he said, well, how much money do you have running your company? And I said, well, we trade stocks to fund the company. He said, you use company money to fund the company. I said, yeah. I said, we build web pages and stuff, but like this internet thing is sort of new. Yeah. He's like, I understand that. I kicked Jerry out of our conference room because they stole all the chairs from the office. That's a true story of Yahoo. So I was like, okay, man, you get it. You know the internet. And I said, so we could have $7,000, $15,000, or $2,000, depending on what my partner traded today. I don't know. And he just didn't say anything. He pulled out this ratty checkbook for anybody who remembers when people use checkbooks. It didn't have a cover. It just had this binded thing. And I was driving where I was pulling a 21-foot boat. So you sort of need to pay attention.
Yep. And
he hands me over a check and he said, let's do this. And it was for $50,000. And that's how my entrepreneur career. What's that?
That's a lot back then as well, And
yeah, that was a lot of money with no contract. I mean, so long and short, we raised $1 million. Internet crashed in 2001. I didn't think the internet was going away. Bought the company back from the investors, ran it as a cash cow for about 10 years, built a business plan, and really built it as a side hustle. In that time, was an early guy at America Online in marketing analysis. I worked for 2 venture firms, went back to being an entrepreneur, started another company, and was really running it as a side hustle. But then I got to a point where I said, I really want to get to California. My wife's originally from California. I wanted to be near Silicon Valley, mainly because the risk of new venture is very high anyway. Why not reduce it? Houses out here are really expensive, as you're familiar being a California. And I developed a 5-year plan, and about 4.5 years in, a big media company in Canada bought it. And that's how I'm talking to you from this house at the beach here in Half Moon Bay, California. But in between there, I'd worked for 2 venture firms. I'd failed a bunch of times. I sold another company that did software engineering, classified software engineering in the government. And I've been really lucky in my life to have a lot of people that helped me, that didn't need to help me, that got me here. So while I think I'm halfway smart, there's always a team behind success. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. And I don't think people say this enough. My number one partner, although I've had I've had good experiences and bad experiences with partners and in general, mostly good. The bads weren't that we hated each other, just that we disagreed and that caused problems. But, my best partner has been my wife, and we've been together 25 years, and it's really hard to have a partner who's an entrepreneur, especially when there, even if you have a good business, there's always risk about where that money is going to come from to pay the mortgage. So
Yep.
she's been an incredible woman, and candidly, without her, I wouldn't be here. I grew up on the East Coast, and California seemed to be not just, flyover states away. It seemed to be another universe, and really gave me confidence to make that move. And just not unlike you, Chris, who, moved to New Zealand
Ended
from.
up in New Zealand and married now, and yeah, my wife and I, same thing, the ups and downs, but she's always been the biggest supporter in that, which is yeah, you've got to find that, whether it be your partner or if you're single, finding it with a friend or somebody. But yeah, definitely. So Brennan, you've done a whole ton, like literally, if anybody's going to burn out, I'm sure there's burnouts in there. I know you were telling me about an experience before we started recording that, but first I want to know, what's your definition to burnout?
I think what I've found
Mm,
is that burnout is the inability to perform.
yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to make it simple, but I think we can talk about it. There's a lot of complexities that happen, but for me, it's basically been the inability to perform at the level that I know I can perform, regardless of how much you step on the gas. Yeah. It's sort of like stepping on the gas, and you want to keep stepping on the gas, but for whatever reason, the fuel injectors aren't putting gas into the engine. And, when that happens, for me, at least, that's when I've known that it is time to back off.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like running it's like putting your foot on the gas on a car that's not tuned very well.
Exactly. And that's what's happened. And just when you said that, we were talking about the worst burnout I've ever had, for sure, when we were talking. But I do remember I also have an MBA, and I was also working at the time, believe it or not. And that got to a point where I was younger. I was in my really early 30s. And I think I just was able to push through it, but I did feel it. I did. I had a lot of self-awareness that I could see that I wasn't doing my best work. When you ask who you are, right? When people say, who are you? Or what is your why? If that's the popular thing now, I compete every day. That's who I am. Like, I compete every day really hard, and I want to win. And actually, I'll amend that. I hate losing more than I like winning.
And that creates a successful person, because you're going to lose a lot. And as long as you hate losing, you'll keep fighting through so you don't actually lose.
And that is the truth about me. And I love to compete. I want to be better. I want to make myself better. And I don't look at other people as the gauge, but I use it as inspiration of what is possible within you. So, yeah.
So what have you learned over all the years of, running all the businesses and going all the ups and downs and the burnouts and the wanting to give up? I'm sure there's times that you've wanted to give up, just like we all do. What have you learned that keeps, that are your top things that keep you going, so you don't end up getting to that stage of really burned out, or, not wanting to, not being able to perform?
I think you and I touched on this a little bit before we started recording. You as a human need to look really deeply inside yourself if you are going to do something that is, well, I don't even know if that's true, because I think moms have an incredibly hard job if they work and raise kids. So if you're going to embark on something like that, you need to really take time to understand who you are. And I don't mean that on level 1 of the onion or the second layer. I'm talking 5, 6, 7 layers deep of who you really are, and paying attention to your body. Your body will tell you. And for me, the key has been exercise. For sure. I try to ride my bike 100 to 250. I mean, ideally I'm riding 150 miles a week, and I lift twice a week. As I've gotten older, I've realized that if you don't exercise at least an hour a day, then the old cells overcome the new cells. So I try to do that, but I think I do want to make a comment that I don't believe in this balanced life if you are going to do something incredibly hard. And the reason I'm saying that is it's not 33, 33, 33, meaning it's not 33 mind, 33 body, 33 business. It's in order to excel at that incredible level, you are going to forego some things. And the key is to being able to come back to it and knowing where your red line is. For me, after business school, I quit the venture capital world, which my friends from business school thought was absolutely absurd, considering that at the time there's only 7,000 professionals in the world. There's probably less now. It's a super hard job to get. It's coveted by business school graduates between investment banking, venture capital, and maybe that's it. And maybe entrepreneurship now at some level, but the barrier to entry is really hard. And I took a month off and traveled around Nicaragua with a friend of mine from business school for a month. And I did not do anything other than just spend time in Nicaragua and look for businesses and basically just see the world from a view that I was really grateful to have a friend who is from there and knew a lot of people, and family knew a lot of people and had insight. So that was a time when I knew I was running. I mean, I was going to school. I was a VC, which is super hard. And I was running my fishing site as a side hustle and maintaining my relationship, and of which she and I had bought another house because of where the VC firm was. So during the week, I lived in the city and then would come to our house. And I remember, this is an example where you know where the line is. So there was a group in business school. You have study groups. Your group stays with you for 2 years. I did an international program. Our international team rotated every quarter, and they wanted to meet on Sunday mornings. And it was literally the only day of the week that I was getting to take a break. So I basically said, I'm not coming. And they said, well, you have to come, you're not contributing. And I said, I'm not coming. It is literally my only day off. I'm not saying that what you're saying isn't true, that this is important and that I'm going to get a grade, but I'm not doing it. And it actually cost me. So at the end, they all turned me in for not doing quote unquote my part, which I did write my part, but I didn't participate in the group activity. But I did that to create a boundary so that I could, in the long term, maintain my relationship with my then girlfriend, now wife. We've been together 25 years. I think we've been married for 14, maybe the other way around. But, that was a time when I was like, this is getting crazy. And I wound up having to write this stupid 30-page paper at the end to graduate, but it was a price that I was willing to pay because the alternative was going, that's going to be worse. The last time that I got burned out was 2 years ago after I got done this stint running a government company, and I had literally run myself ragged. The work is intense. You work in a box, effectively, in a classified environment. There's no real windows. There's certainly not the freshest air, and it is dark, and the stuff is serious. You can have fun, but the consequences that you work in are real. They're not fake. And I got done that, Chris, and I literally sat on the couch for probably 10 weeks, scared to death. I mean, burnt out I had run, we're running, it's like the iPhone starts running at like 2% and it says I'm shutting down.
Yeah.
That's where I was. And the challenge with that is that becomes a spiral because then it scares you, then you panic, and then you keep chasing this
further down the rabbit hole. And
right.
that 2% goes to zero pretty quickly.
Yeah, like it goes to zero. And I sat, I mean, I'm not exaggerating to you. I couldn't, like, I lost my sharpness in my mind, and that scared me because I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to come back? And while I had made some money for sure, I still, I'm not that old. I was going to do another one, or for better, for worse, being an entrepreneur is sort of my thing. Like, and I'm not saying I can't work for someone, but working in a corporate environment probably is not an option at this point. And not good or bad. It's just not who I am, or the environment that, unless that company was incredibly adventurous and open, which bureaucracies just don't happen, just don't allow that after 50 people for the most part. But I was scared that I wasn't going to be able to do it again. And I remember telling my wife, like, I'm just not sure that what we're going to do. And she let me sit on I think I watched like 4 or 5 series, on the whole series, Chris, on Netflix. Like, not just like, hey, let me watch a show and then go run. No, like one episode after the other, after the other, after the other. I think there's a Spanish show. I actually liked it, series. And I think it had like 7 seasons, and I just, all day long, that's all I did. And eventually what I said to myself, and, I'm not sure that, I wonder, Chris, the difference between depression and burnout. I think burnout has the symptoms of depression, but I'm not sure that it's the same thing.
I think there's different levels of it. There's different levels of, burnout is in my opinion, and from what I've seen, burnout is more related to just doing too much. Depression is because you literally do not believe, you believe that you can't in all areas, or you're that level, not just in certain ones. And I think the burnout honestly can cause depression or states of depression. Like I constantly say, I was definitely in states of depression when I was fully burned out. There was no ands, ifs, or buts about it. But yeah, no, I think you're definitely right there.
I think that's what happened. I'm just making that distinction because it's what you just said. It's the burnout that causes the depression. It doesn't mean that it's not depression, but it's a different type of depression than something else that, and maybe, depression gets triggered by a lot of things, but nonetheless, my philosophy towards the end of that was, and I think I was also scared, like there's no fallback for me. There's no, I'm going to inherit it, $100 million. And that's what I'm going to retire on. Like, it's eat what you kill.
Yeah.
And, so for me, I think a lot of that scared me. And I remember my wife's just saying, you'll be fine. Now, whether or not she thought I was going to be fine, I think she hoped I'd be fine. But what I did to claw out of that was, I decided, just using my psychology degree, and I'd done some postgraduate work with a professor from Stanford on persuasive computing of all things, but it turned, habits forming and things. I'm a certified tiny habit person. And what I said was, I'm just going to show up to the gym and do 3 sets. And because during this time, I was not riding my bike and I was not working out, which is only making things worse. And I was eating crap. I was like, yeah, let's make a cake. Like, that is not me. I mean, I like cake, and I don't like cake. I love cake.
I love cake too, but I know what you mean. You get to a stage where it's like, I want cake. I have to have cake. Not I like cake. It's I have to have cake. I have to have the bag of chips. I have to.
And my wife, God bless her heart, she's just trying to get me out of this thing. So if I want a cake, she likes cake too. So she's going to bake a cake, and, we make a yellow cake with chocolate icing, which is like my favorite. And I could eat that whole thing in a day.
Yep.
So, now you're putting sugar in your system.
Yep.
Now it's making every, like, you're just,
the highs and lows become even more high and low. And it circles. It becomes a bad roller coaster that you just can't get off of.
No, you're literally killing yourself.
Yeah.
And I was aware of it. And my motto was, just figure out one thing I can do today and let's get till tomorrow, and do a little bit better tomorrow. Yeah. And I went to the gym, and just like getting in the car and driving to the gym, doing 3 sets. And that was the goal, and eventually that led to a whole workout. And then I started feeling better. Then I said, okay, I'm going to get back on the bike. For me, a 36-mile ride is like a normal ride, but I was like, okay, I'm not going to do 36 miles on the Pescadero Loop. I'm going to do 10 miles on the Higgins Loop and be okay with it. Yeah. And I'm just going to get dressed, get on my bike and ride. And to be candid, that's what clawed me out. And then I think I had, I don't know what you call it, but I was so burned out. Like, I didn't even want to touch my computer. Like, it was this thing that had, my whole life is tech. Yeah. And I didn't even want to get on the computer, Chris. Like, I actually didn't open the computer in that time. I didn't even open my email on my phone. I mean, I'd look at the weather or look at what the series was that I wanted to watch, but that was it. So I said, okay, I'm going to get on my computer for 10 minutes and write something. That was my goal. And I just kept doing these little steps,
little baby steps,
because eventually I realized, like, there ain't nobody coming to help. And there's nobody. It's not that I didn't have support. Of course, my wife supported me, but at the end of the day, at least the way that I saw it, I'm not saying that in other cases it's not true. I'm either going to make or break it. I got to bet on me.
Well, at the end of the day, you can have all the support around you. You can have all the knowledge. We have Google now. You have all the knowledge that you've ever wanted at your fingertips whenever you want it. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to use it. You do have to bat on yourself sometimes. And, I think there are some real important things in there, is it doesn't matter how quote unquote successful you are. It doesn't matter how from the outside, what it looks like. Everybody goes through shit, as well as to get out of that is, if you feel like something is the hardest thing in the world, is just taking those baby steps. Just one step in front of the other literally will eventually turn into you running, to you sprinting. So Brennan, I have to ask, first off, what is it that you believe caused you to get to that state? Is it from just being in that box and that, doing the government stuff?
I know it got, when you are on a plane on Monday, you're changing time zones, your circadian rhythm is off, you're not eating the healthiest foods. On the road, I am able to eat well, but certainly not the best. You're not sleeping well because you're, as good as I was at readjusting from time zones, which there are techniques that you can use. And, I encourage everybody, if you don't do this, you should. Every morning you should go out and you should get sunlight in your eyes. I don't mean close your eyes. I mean, open your eyes. I'm not saying stare at the sun, but stare at the bright light for 2 to 6 minutes every single morning. And if you do that, you're going to find your sleep pattern changes and you can reset. And I was using, I hate to use the word hack, Chris, but I was using everything. I mean, I was using the tools. That's how hard I was running. Yeah. I'm using every single tool, including I had all my blood tested. I had all my vitamins, whether or not you believe in vitamins, I don't know, but I had them all tested, my whole body scanned, and I still take all that, not all of it, but, I had it dialed in, Chris, where I was doing every hack possible to make it through. It was just extreme travel, extreme long hours, the pressure and the speed. I mean, that company, went really fast. and just intense. And I also think, candidly, looking back on it, I think I was dehydrated all the time. And I did drink, but those environments will just suck the water out of you.
You sitting in an aircon room, it sucks the water out of you. And so if you're doing a lot, you're sitting in airplanes, you're in airports, and yeah. So you're pretty much, if I use a car analogy again, you're pretty much running like a F1 car without ever looking at the motor. Well, without ever stopping, without ever, like, it's just going from one racetrack to the, it's like doing the 24 hours of Le Mans.
Yeah, no, that's what it was. It's like the Le Mans. Yeah.
Like doing the Le Mans, but doing it for like 4 days instead of just the 24 hours.
Oh yeah, like more like 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years. So you've done all that. You can recognize what it was that caused it. So what do you do now to make sure that that doesn't happen again?
I recognize the signs. Let's say this. I always recognize the signs. Like, I didn't come home from that and not recognize that I was wrecked. Yeah. I mean, I would come home from these, whatever they were, and sleep for 18 hours. You know, maybe I'm exaggerating, but it was 15. I mean, I have a sleep tracker in my bed, and my wife knew it. She's like, we're not doing anything when you come home because you're going to sleep for 15 hours. And I listen to my body. I think that's the one thing that I do really well. I do listen to it. Back then, to your point, I think it's a great analogy. I was in the 24-hour Le Mans race, didn't take pit stops, and just believed that the engine could keep going. But what I do now, I think, is, so I will say this. The human body and mind can take an enormous amount more than we're, and you being in law enforcement and in that world, understand that, you know, the first level of pain is not the end. The second level of pain is not the end. The third level of pain, you're starting to get up there. And maybe, depending on what scale you believe, the fourth probably kills you, but you have 3 levels. If you stay at that, you have 3 levels of pain. And I understood, and maybe it just comes from my life as competing every day. It certainly comes from riding a bike racing, where, you know, that'll teach you. Like, your body will want to give up at mile 80. You know, when you've got 75 more miles to go, you can do it. You got to push through it. I think what I've learned is not to push through that 2.75 level. If we're talking about a scale 1 to 4, you know, when I hit that, I'm going to back off regardless of what it is, mainly because I realized that that trough is just too deep. And I don't know about you, Chris, you don't look that old, but as you do get older, I do believe recovery is a little bit longer.
Yeah. No, I'm 30. What did I do? Just turned 34. But like in my 20s, I used to do the craziest. You know, my goal initially when I joined the police was I wanted to do our version of SWAT team. So I would train like that from the very beginning when I was training to get into the place, and my body does not like the fact of what I've done to it now 10 years on. But no, that makes that, you know, it's listening to that body. I do have a question. If you could go back and tell yourself something back in during that time, what would it be? Would you change anything?
I tend, you're going to think I'm avoiding the question, but I'm not. I tend not to look at my life with regrets.
Yeah. I'm not saying
no, I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying, I'm setting this up.
Yeah.
Cool. I know you're not saying that. And for all listeners, Chris is absolutely not saying that at all. I'm framing it in a way that says, I believe I make the best decisions with the information that I have at the time, based on all the influences, whatever those are.
Yeah.
And I accept that. And when I hear that question, it's easy to look back and say, well, Brandon, you know, you should have told yourself that you should have quit earlier, or you should have taken a break. But when I look back, had I taken that break, maybe I didn't learn what I learned. Maybe we didn't hit those sales numbers that we hit in 18 months. Maybe we didn't get that contract. Maybe, so for me, and maybe I'm too analytical, but going back and saying, what would I told myself? I think I did tell myself what needed to be told, which is you are in a place that you've been, but if you continue, it doesn't end well. And I think I just decided that that's what I was going to do. Mainly, I think, Chris, also as a business owner, like I take really seriously the responsibility of all the lives of which fundamentally depend on me as a leader to make sure they can make money to pay for their mortgage, their food, their kids, and things like that. So I think for me, I was willing to make that sacrifice of myself because I felt obligation, if that's a word, to do that, mainly because I sold them on the idea. So I know that's not maybe the answer you've received or we're looking for, but I don't think I didn't tell myself that I can remember, well, I will say this. I don't think I didn't, because I can remember back, Chris, getting dropped off by my wife, taking off out of SFO, looking down on Half Moon Bay, and almost starting to cry and say, what in God's name am I doing? I worked my career, that one career with that social networking site, to get to a house on the ocean in California, which was like not like my dream. What am I doing? So I was saying those things. I think I don't think I had a choice. Maybe, we do this podcast in 7 years and age comes and says, hey, Brandon, you said that 7 years ago. Did you reflect on that? And do you have anything? But, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't have the lessons to share with you and your audience today. So, I don't know. Yeah. I just think I believe that I make the best decisions that I can. They're not always good ones. I mean, I make a lot of mistakes. But I try to, the right decisions I try to make more of. And I do to this day keep an eye on the accelerator. And, you're not that old, in your 30s, but here's the analogy I would use that I think if your listeners are younger, they'll understand. Like when you're in college and you're 21, you can party all night, 4 nights a week in college. You can recover from the hangover with a cheesesteak, a soda, and some good fries. And you're like ready to go the next night, right? Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. When you're in your 30s, that doesn't work
takes
quite
a couple
as well.
days, and then as you get older, it takes even more. Yeah.
So that's what I would offer you is I think for me, I realize that the recovery, I will say it's not terribly more in your 40s, but it is more. So, that adds up. So, yeah, and I've eliminated a lot of things. I don't drink.
I guess it comes back to what you were saying that compromising, going, okay, why am I doing this? Why do I need to do this? And what am I giving up for it? And is it more important? Is what I'm giving up less? Is what I'm doing more important than what I'm giving up? And actually going, okay, yep, okay, yes, I do need to just keep going, because I know there's going to be so many people out there, and I know that are sitting in the position that you were in, going, fuck, I just wish I could stop. I just want to stop, but I don't know how to stop. I don't want to get where Brendan did, but what do I do to get out of it?
But you will, and I think you just have to, as you were saying that, Chris, I think look, I don't mean to come off as this stuff easy. You were talking about an experience that you had when you went to an event and you sort of come out of it through this deep introspection. Understanding who you are and what you value once you understand those principles, the reason it's so easy for me is because I believe that fundamentally I know who I am. I know why I do what I do. I understand my flaws. I am certainly not perfect by any means, but I accept them because that's who I am. But once you know who you are and you know your values, that person who's listening right now that says, I don't want to wind up on the couch for 10 weeks, and maybe it was 12, you'd have to ask Yvette, but maybe it was 16, but it wasn't more than 4 months. But understand what you value. Just like I made that decision on Sunday morning that I wasn't going to go to a team meeting because my relationship, that wasn't easy. I mean, honestly, I'm telling you, it was a very, very easy decision for me because I valued that time with Yvette, who I love, and it was easy. Like, I'm willing to suffer that consequence. So if somebody's listening out there and say, I don't want to get there, then ask yourself what you value. And, sometimes you have to go a little bit further, but understand that the payment is excessive. And I'm not sure that everybody comes out of it, candidly. So that's the risk. I don't know how you feel. And you have a lot of friends in the law enforcement and in that world, but not everybody makes it out alive. So understand that if you let yourself there, you're in an unknown place, especially if you don't know who you are and you don't know what your values are.
I just had a friend of mine, I won't go into huge details in that, but a friend of mine's friend, who also was a colleague, took his own life a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, it's real.
And my friend had just seen him the week before, and some things came up for that guy, and then it happened. But it's some people don't. So make that decision on what you want and what your values are. Like mine, I left the police and I said, I'm not working on the weekends. I want to spend the weekends with my wife or going and doing other things. I'm not working on the weekends. I do like an hour with my group and that of my coaching and that, which I've always done. But I'm like, I'm not doing major work over the weekend because I worked too many years for shift, and I didn't see my wife for a lot of weekends and that, and I didn't see friends that were off on the weekends. I want to go play. I don't want to go have fun on weekends, whether it detriments my business, whatever. I'm okay with that because I'm not working on weekend.
And I think you have to make those decisions. And I think it's important to talk about. I don't think enough people talk about it, Chris.
No.
I think it's because they don't want to talk about it. But I had probably one of my closest friends committed suicide because, and he wasn't in the government. He was a professional career. He worked with me in America Online. He helped me get my job. We went to MBA school. MBA school. We went and got our MBA together. We did an enormous amount of things, and he broke. The thing that I will say to your listeners is this: I'm not sure that you should use me as an example of the ability to get out of your own way. I have done an enormous amount of work on myself, and invested a career really in an undergraduate in psychology, a master's in psychology, a ton of coaching that I had since I was in high school. I've put in, I don't know if it's 10,000 hours, but it's a lot of hours of self work. And what I'm getting to is don't be scared to ask for help.
Yeah.
My story that I didn't ask for help wasn't because I was proud. I had conversations with my wife and family and things, but I had the tools and at least self-awareness because I had those core. I understood who I was. I understood what my values were, and I understood tools and frameworks of which I was trained to actually use on myself to get out of it.
Yeah.
Not everybody has that, and you can't get out alone a lot of the time.
I think it's real important that, you had the tools, just like I've got the tools now, because I've gone in the last 2 years, I've spent probably 60, 70K on myself, just literally on courses and coaching and courses to develop my business and that, which all had to do with mindset stuff and that in them as well. But I think it's real important there to go, you had the tools, but you were still having those conversations with your wife, with your friends, and still working through it with them, and not just going, I'll deal with it myself. I think there's too many people, but also especially males, that just go, I'll do not, I can't. I don't know if it's that they don't want to look weak, but it's that I I'm not going to ask for help. I can deal with it myself. I can do it myself. The kind of the
Because
old,
they're embarrassed, Chris.
yeah, it is. It
It's
is.
let's just call it what it is. Like,
yeah.
you're embarrassed because you think that makes you weak, because the societies that we live in say that that's true. And actually, I think it's the opposite.
Yeah. And that's what I said. Like when I went to go leave the police, I got told some stuff that, you have a red flag on your file. If the welfare person has to get involved to get me some time off in that. And I was just like, this is bullshit. I was like, that pisses me. I am the stronger one by saying I need help. Whereas I know that half the crew that I work with all need help, but they're not willing to ask for it. And so, but yeah, and it's very, and burnout will cause that. It'll cause that levels of depression and that, because you just don't want to do anything. So yeah, no, I think, thanks for sharing all of that, Brendan, as well. I only have a few more questions for you. You touched on it a little bit earlier. I am a why guy. I like to know people's whys. I believe that everybody does have a why that drives them, pushes them through the hard times, and definitely the easy times. Mine is I want to create less pain. That's why the podcast was started. I want people to get the tools from others so that they have less pain in their lives. Same reason I went into life coaching. Same reason I'm going into financial advising, so that I can create less pain, because financial wise is the biggest pain in everybody's life.
That is true.
What would you say your why is?
I just like to compete every single day. And that's who I am. And that doesn't mean that I'm just selfish. For instance, on the business side, like people that I help, I want them to win or not lose, so that I can brag about their success winning, because I want to compete. So I want to be very clear that it's not just a selfish competing, but my why is that's who I am. I don't know if it's why or who I am, but that's just who I am. Like, I want myself to be the best, and anybody that I touch, I want to be the best, and for them to know that they can be what they want to be. It's all a conversation of a story that you're making up in your head. It's not real.
I love that, and I love how you phrase it. A lot of people will hear, "Oh, I love to compete," and it's like, "Oh, well, you don't be a dick." And it's like, well, no, I want others to compete. I want them to compete. I want them to give their best. I want to help them give their best. That's awesome. What would be your number one piece of advice for people wanting to start a business, or wanting to get something off the ground?
My number one piece of advice is to test your product really fast. Well, I'll just give you the steps. Build a one-page business plan, and then test your product or service and find out if people will pay you for the problem that you believe you're solving for them. Because it's where everybody goes wrong, including myself. I've failed more than I've been successful. Just that the successes, when you hit it, they get you in house in Half Moon Bay and maybe a few other things. But you've got to test that idea, and I hate to go back to this, Chris, but you've got to know who you are, because in the entrepreneur world and starting a business, you are going to be told no about 90,000 times. And you have to be willing to accept that the problem that you thought you were solving for someone may be a problem, but they may not be willing to pay you for it, which means you can't create a business. And then you have to decide if you want to run it as a hobby or a nonprofit, or you want to pursue it as a business. And I think that's the mistake that most people make, and they become a self-licking ice cream cone with their own idea. And I encounter these people. Well, Brandon, this is a big problem. Is someone paying you for it? Well, I haven't gotten any customers yet. Why not? Well, it's a good idea. I know this is a problem. I mean, if they're built, and you don't need something perfect.
Yeah.
You just need a prototype. And the other thing I would suggest to people is solve, and I made this mistake terribly, and it caused a really big failure in my career with a company, is solve one problem for people that's really easy to understand
Yeah.
in less than 15 seconds. If you have to explain it for 10 minutes, it's too complicated. You don't understand it, and the person receiving it definitely won't.
Yeah. I love that. So, Brendan, if somebody wants to get your assistance or even just wants to pick your brain on things, how do they get in touch with you?
Best way is to tune into my website that has all the information, contact form, and I do read all that. I do have an assistant who is an extraordinarily gifted woman who helps me stay straight. So just go to brandoncwhite.com.
Cool, perfect. And we'll put that link down in the description down below. Awesome, Brandon. Last question I have for you. What's your top tip to self-happiness?
Want what you have.
I love that. I love that. So many people want what they don't have, and we talked about in the very beginning. But yes, want what you have. Want what you have. Awesome, guys. So this, actually, any other things that you'd like to add, Brendan?
No, thanks for having me on, and I hope this helps listeners out there who may be on the verge or already in the deep end or whatever that is. And always remember, if you need help, ask for it.
Yeah, no, I love that. Definitely ask for it. And as we always say at the end of these, at the end of these episodes, is you know, here at Fight the Burnout, it's all about, my motto has always been, especially in the last 5-6 years, train hard, test easy. But I've always lived by it. You train not just your body, but also your mind. And as Brendan said today, know yourself. So train really hard at knowing yourself. So when you do get tested, you know who you are and you know your boundaries. You know if you're not going to work on Sunday, or if you're not going to work on the weekends, or you're going to have like Friday afternoons off, or whatever it is, and negotiate that, because that is you being tested. So make sure that you train hard. So when you are tested, it's easy. And if you need anything, if you want to reach out to us, you want more information on anything, just send us an email at fighttheburnouttpodcast@gmail.com. And again, if you want to get in touch with Brendan, go to brandoncwhite.com and he'll help you out. I had a look at his website. Literally, the stuff is right there on the front page. So go have a look. But till next time, we love you, and make sure you share and give us a comment, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon.